All right, so this is, so this is video two. Just kind of trying to figure out what route to take. At least for video two. Well, for video one, it was kind of like an introduction to comic books, and then it kind of accidentally led into the Thor run. Only because I really like the Watcher, and then the Watcher does kind of tie into um, the Thor runs. The Thor runs. Yeah, I kind of wanted it to have like a better format, so I figured for the second video I wanted to have like an actual format of like what comic books I pick and why I specifically chose these. Um, and so like this whole general, these whole videos are just kind of like to like I said, like a guide, you know, like yeah, like a guide, a syllabus, whatever, call it whatever you want. And so yeah, so I thought I wanted to I wanted to do these I wanted to do these videos a lot sooner. So I'm like really behind. So I wanted to do one for the Disney Plus shows because there was WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, and there's going to be Hawkeye later this year, and Miss Marvel early next year. So yeah, I kind of wanted to do this earlier. Granted, the thing about Loki is it's not based off of a comic book. It does take certain elements of different comic books, and same thing with all of the other Disney Plus shows. It's not just based on like one or two comics. It takes inspiration from various storylines. I have not read them all. I have read maybe three. So these are just some of the ones that I liked. Well, actually, for WandaVision, well, let me just dive into WandaVision real quick. WandaVision, there's the Scarlet Witch run. I believe this is the 2016 run. 2015, my bad. 2015 to 2016. This one actually wasn't that good. uh, yeah, I kind of it did because Scarlet Witch is a confusing character in terms of her background because her like how I mentioned earlier, characters are constantly changing, and the one problem with that is there is such a thing as changing too much, and that's exactly what's wrong with Scarlet Witch. Her background changes too much, or I like it's hard to keep track of her background, and like she's like at first she's like a wizard or whatever. She's a witch. Then she's a mutant, and then she's not a mutant, and then it's like a whole thing. She's an Nexus being, and it's like a whole thing. It's like, oh, what the hell is going on with her background? Because it's honestly hard to keep track of, and I honestly don't even know what she is. I know she's a human, at least to a certain extent, but yeah. So it is hard to keep track of her background. Um, this comic book doesn't really help with that. It, there is one thing I liked about this one is that it's made very clear because if you read some of the other comic books with Scarlet Witch is that well, one main problem with characters that are super powerful is that they become very boring, so they kind of have to like give them something to kind of like make them usable in stories. And so Scarlet Witch is one of the most powerful characters ever in comics. So they kind of in a sense give her mental illness or mental health issues, and because that's really apparent in House of M, which I will go into because that is on here, because One Division does take inspiration from House of M, and I will get into that. So it does kind of touch up on that more, which it's alright. So I didn't really like the storyline, but one thing I have always wondered is like how are heroes doing mentally? You know, like the amount of stuff they go through. You never see them once go to therapy. Like you never see them ever even bring it up. Never like you never see Captain America go out in space, you know, like fight an evil version of themselves, end up in an alternate dimension, and then come back home and be like, all right, let's go back to work. Let's fight criminals here. you never once see Captain America go to therapy, and I'm like, like the amount of like a trauma that carries after like years, you would think he would go to therapy, right? Like at least once, or like someone bring it up, like, "Hey Cap, you should go to therapy," but then Cap be like, "No, because," bleh. But yeah. So in this one, you actually do see Scarlet Witch go to therapy, and it's such like a minute thing, and I really like that. I really like that about Scarlet Witch. Like you see her going to therapy, and she's like talking with this character, and like they offer her a drink, like, "Oh, I can't because I'm on my medication for whatever reason," and it's like, oh, I actually really like that about this storyline, and unfortunately it's only brought up like once, or like her taking medication only brought up once, but her going to therapy is a constant thing throughout the run, and I actually really did like that. At some point that does eventually stop because she's like better in a sense, and although like good for her, I kind of wish we got more of Wanda Maximoff going to therapy. So like in Falcon and Winter Soldier, Bucky was going to therapy. I actually really like that because it's something that character severely needs, because we're like the amount of stuff he had to go through, he's not gonna get it, and yeah, so that character severely needs that. Especially Wanda Maximoff, she really needs that as well. So I actually really did like that. Um, the artwork's actually pretty decent. Um, yeah, I don't have much to say about the Scarlet Witch other than like it kind of like opens like a small window of like who Scarlet Witch is. So that's always nice. Um, WandaVision doesn't take inspiration from this, like at all. Agatha does show up, but Agatha's dead. How did she die? Pfft, I don't know. Beats me. Um, yeah, it just kind of go into her background a little bit, not too much. Once again, it's confusing because I don't know what her background is. Is she a mutant? Is she not? Is she an Inhuman? What's the deal? And I think at one point they even bring it up, and then even she's like, it doesn't matter. Like it does not matter what I am, because at the end of the day, I'm me, and so that was cool. So, Scarlet Witch by Robinson, Del Rey, Rudy, Dylan, Visions. Ooh, Visions. Pulido. This next one was actually really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It was so fun. There is no villain in it whatsoever. There are antagonists, but no villain. And it was such an interesting story. Because I realize I probably said that a lot, but this one's actually really, 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 really good. The Vision by Tom King. Okay, so the premise behind this one is Vision creates his own family, and they move out to the suburbs. He has a wife and two twins, a set of twins, two twins. That's 4 kids. He has a set of twin children, and they're all synthezoids, so they're all extremely powerful, and they're all trying to like live, like a white picket fence family with like a yard and like a nice house, and they're all trying to like fit in, but the neighbors are like uneasy because they're synthezoids. They're extremely powerful. Like, oh, we don't feel comfortable living next door to these nuclear weapons, and they're all just trying to fit in, and problems arise, and like secrets get exposed within the family, and it's not picture perfect. And when I say there are no villains, villains do show up, but there are no villains to the Vision family, which is what I really like. It's just pretty much it's because they're all synthezoids, and yeah, they're all kind of more or less trying to struggle with the definition of what does it mean to be human. And I honestly like stuff that asks that question. There's a movie called Jojo Rabbit. I feel like it kind of brings up that question, or like that topic, like, oh, humanizing or whatever. But that's not comic book related, so I'm not going to talk about that much. Yeah, so it does kind of bring up the question, what does it mean to be human, and what does it mean to be human to a synthezoid? And they kind of do go into a debate about that in the beginning, and then they come back to it at the end. It's 12 issues. It's all really good. Tom King is really good. The artwork is consistent, which I always like. Because sometimes the artwork does change. Sometimes depending on how long the run is or who the artists are, or whatever, for whatever reason. And like sometimes like the changes are like a little bit different. Like you notice a few things, but it's honestly really nice to just have consistent artwork throughout the entire story, and that's what the Vision has in terms of storytelling. The artwork is consistent throughout. Um, yeah, and they're all just struggling with their own um, problems that they have to deal with. The only background you need to know about this is that the Vision is an Avenger, and he's an active member of the Avengers. And yeah, anything you don't know about the Vision, which is a lot, I guarantee you. Reading this, I didn't really know much about the Vision other than like a little bit above the basics, and this kind of does give you more background into his character and how his comic book origins. And once again, if you have any questions about the Vision, I have learned more about the Vision, and like at one point there is there's a flashback to when the Vision was with Scarlet Witch, and there is a cow at the dinner table, and I'm gonna lie, I was confused. Now, I'm not. So you will see that cow. You're like, what the hell is there a cow doing here? What? Once again, feel free to ask me questions. I'll answer them. No worries. Yeah. WandaVision did take inspiration from this because it's Wanda Maximoff and Vision living in the suburbs, and this one is just Vision living in the suburbs, and like at one point he is wearing like a suit, just like screen keeps sleeping, just like in the show. Where is it? If I can find it, I'll show you. If not, there's no point. No need to drag this on longer than it should. Oh, look, here he is wearing a suit. Is it? Yeah, he looks a little weird, wonky, but whatever. It's still pretty good. I like it. Look, and I'm telling you, the artwork is so good. Like it starts off at like whatever. It starts off like all homesy and folksy, whatever, and then like later on it kind of gets a bit darker and it's like whoa, it's really good. I really like this one. It's definitely a good read. I've let some of my friends borrow it, and they're not like comic book buffs or like comic book fans or whatever, and they all really liked it too. They're like, yeah, we didn't know what to expect going into this, but like we really liked it. And I always bring up, it's really good how it doesn't have a villain, right? Like, yeah, that's actually a pretty interesting aspect, and I think it's a pretty good. I love that fact that it has no villain. You know that, and I honestly feel like WandaVision would have benefited from also not having a villain. They had Agatha, which they could have still had Agatha, but still not have her be the villain. Like the villain should have been Grief, and the show is really really good. Agatha didn't make the show worse, but the show still would have been better had it just been about grief and overcoming grief, you know? But yeah, so that's the Vision. And so these are... Sorry. So these are next on my comic book recommendations for WandaVision. House of M. So... there is a storyline that takes place before this one called Avengers Disassembled. I have not read it yet because I hear that one's like not that good, and there's like a mess between like issues or whatever. There's like what's it called, conflicts of interest, and so I have not picked it up. I don't think I want to though. Sorry. Yeah, I don't think I want to though. So I'm probably not. If anything, I'll just read a line. I'll probably bring it up in the future video if I do. But House of M is arguably, I think, one of House of M and Vision, I think, are the two comic books that WandaVision took inspiration from, because in WandaVision, if you've seen it, if not, go watch it. It's really good. I think it's one of my favorite ones. Sorry. But in WandaVision, Wanda Maximoff kind of alters the reality of a whole town, and she kind of just, makes it her home. Whereas in House of M, WandaVision alters all of reality and changes literally everything. And she gives all of the characters everything they could ever want. to kind of keep them complacent so that she can have what she wants, which is just like her kids, because it's a whole weird thing. And remember how I mentioned that some of the Marvel events get kind of preachy? This one really doesn't, or if it did, it didn't stand out that much because the way this one ends, it actually has lasting consequences throughout the run, throughout like Marvel's run. And I remember reading like because I only read this one recently, like within the year and a half, because of WandaVision. And I remember before reading it, I would like read something and I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? And now that I read House of M, now that I've read House of M, I'm like, oh, that makes more sense. Um, so yeah, she changes. She gives everyone they've ever wanted. She gets what she wants. I won't go into what she wants except besides her kids, but she gets what she wants and she's happy. And then eventually they somehow figure out, oh yeah, we need to change everything back to how it used to be. And there's a whole thing, and it's so good. Uh, yeah, Wanda Maximoff is at the center of the story, but she's almost never really in it, or she's never like a player in it, which is also still pretty good, because she's that powerful. So since like when like that's the problem with like powerful characters, you need to find a way to like use them in the story or like find reasons why they can't use all of their power, and that's always a problem. And sometimes writers can never properly execute that. But if you're consistent with the character, like with Wanda Maximoff, then it works really well. And that's I feel like that's exactly what they did with House of M and Scarlet Witch, because in that one she's kind of just like she's better. House of M also does have some tie-ins. Let me see. Okay, here we go. Oopsies. House of M, SpiderMan. So within this universe, she's up to this point, she's a mutant. What is she now? I have no clue. You can ask me that, but I'm just like, I'm so sorry, I do not know because it changes a lot. But anyways, so in this alternate reality of House of M, since she's a mutant, mutants are kind of like looked down upon. They're like, ugh, mutants, ugh. So what she ends up doing is that she ends up making mutants the superior race and humans the inferior race. And so her father, at this point in time, is Magneto. And that has been changed a lot. And I'm telling you, it's annoying because I don't even know who are her parents. And it's the Scarlet Witch comic doesn't help. It just brings up my question. Anyways, yeah. So at this point, Magneto is her father. So she makes Magneto the ruler of like the mutants, and he's like pretty much the ruler of planet Earth. And yeah, mutants are like seen as like superior. They have like the higher paying jobs, and humans are kind of like just seen as like humies or whatever. They're just kind of like pushed like, ha, loser, you don't have any powers or whatever. And yeah, so that was it. Spider-Man is not a mutant. So in this version, since he gets his superpowers, he goes around saying he is a mutant, and he's not though. I'm just going to say that he goes around saying he's a mutant, even though he's not, and he's living in a world where mutants are seen as superior, whereas humans are not. But at the end of the day, he's still a human. So he also has to struggle with that. What's it called? Fraud. What's it called? Yeah, he feels like a fraud, which he kind of is. But it's an interesting part of the story. So that's a tie-in. It doesn't really do much for the actual story itself, but it's still a fun read. So that's House of M. I have 20 minutes. Cool. So I have about 10 more minutes. So moving on from WandaVision, I think I might just make this one, and then I'll do the other ones for like the second half. Falcon and the Winter Soldier wasn't the best show because COVID definitely impacted. COVID definitely affected a lot of things, and it definitely affected the story for Falcon. It was still good. I still enjoyed it, but it was lacking in certain aspects, and like there were certain plot elements that didn't make sense, and there were certain like plot elements that were brought up in the beginning, but you never really like saw it play through. And it's like, why bring this up in the first place if you're not gonna do anything with it? And then the ending, they had a tell, do not show, which is never good. You never want to tell and not show. You always want to show. Show, don't tell. That's what you want to do. Show, don't tell. Don't tell and not show. It was. I still liked it. I still enjoyed it. Not the best show. Okay. Yes, I have a bias towards Marvel, but I can point out some other flaws. But I'm just gonna check something real quick. Anyways, so Falcon and the Winter Soldier definitely takes inspiration from the Sam Wilson Captain America run from, when is it, 2000? Oh wow, 2012? Yeah, I guess it's still pretty. Yeah, from 2012 to, when did it stop being Captain America? I believe 2017. So this is a complete collection, volume 1. Oopsies, sorry. Yeah, so this is from the, sorry. Turn off notifications, I'm so sorry. I got the 2 volumes, there's only 2 volumes. So I got the 2 volumes. There are other, like, huge comic books elements that kind of tie into it. Like, Secret Empire and, yeah, I guess Secret Empire is pretty much, like, the most important one. Secret Empire is pretty good, too. It's where, Steve Rogers, he's old man Steve. So Steve Rogers gets youngified by the Cosmic Cube. The Cosmic Cube, they work differently in comic books. It alters reality, whereas in the MCU, it houses the Space Stone. So in the comic books, he gets young again, but he ends up becoming evil. He's like Hydra Cap. I like to call him Stevel. My friends laugh at that. It's not supposed to be funny. I literally just call him Stevel because that's what Deadpool called him at one point. Yeah, and then he ends up taking over the entire planet, and Sam Wilson, Captain America, kind of has to fight him, and it's pretty interesting. And at one point, he does show up in Volume 2, and yeah, to that point, you already kind of know he's evil, and it's like, like, you see Sam Wilson, Captain America, fighting with, Stevel Rogers. It's kind of like, But yeah, I like this one because it does kind of bring up the aspect of race. And I'm Mexican, obviously, if you don't know that. What are you doing here? How did you find my videos? I'm Mexican, so I would have preferred seeing a Mexican Captain America. Because, like, yeah. But it's still nice to see a person of color as Captain America because they kind of understand certain struggles that, like, other characters wouldn't have. Yeah, so I have made this, it's not an argument, but I've brought up this debate topic where I tell my friends I can argue that that Sam Wilson is better with the shield in terms of use than Steve Rogers. And at first they're kind of hesitant to agree with me, but they're like, why? And I'm like, okay, look at it this way. Steve Rogers has had a lot of years of practice, and he has a super soldier serum. Sam Wilson had the shield for a couple of years, and he's human. Now, that's not a big deal. But what is a big deal is Sam Wilson has been seen throwing the shield while flying. That's so hard to do. That's so hard to maneuver. He's flying at incredibly fast speeds, and he's able to throw the shield and calculate where it's going to be in order so he can catch it while he's flying and being shot at. That's incredibly hard. So that's why I make the argument that I think Sam Wilson is arguably better utilizing the shield than Steve Rogers. But that's neither here nor there. Or whatever. Yeah, so I like this one. It does kind of bring up race at some point because, like, in the comic book, people are upset that Sam Wilson is Captain America, and they're like, not my cap. And it's interesting It's kind of funny because around the time where no, actually, no, no, because this was before Trump when it's like not my president. So I thought that was kind of funny in terms of like people's reactions. So I kind of thought that was funny. I don't think it was supposed to be funny. I found it funny. Um, yeah, but they do bring that up, so it is something he has to struggle with throughout the comic book. He also has to struggle with like self doubt and like, oh, am I even good enough for this shield? Because like so many people do not like him as Captain America, and he's like, yeah, he gave me the shield. I'm his predecessor, you know, and it's like it's a huge debacle, and it's just something he has to struggle with a lot, and it's really interesting, because Sam Wilson doesn't really get a lot of spotlight, so it is interesting finally seeing him like in the middle of all of everyone's attention, just like right there, dead center. So that's kind of nice. It's nice because I'm pretty sure we've all have gotten a job and be like, oh, I'm not good enough for this job, you know. But you got the job for a reason, you know. If you got the job for the reason, then that means you're good enough. And if you have self doubt, like, oh, I'm not good enough for it, don't, because you got the job, you're good enough. You know, you shouldn't have to struggle with self doubt, you know. Um, but yeah, so I like that. And then when Steve Wall shows up, he's younger, and I'm like, "Are you gonna give the shield back?" And Steve Wall's like, "Wah ha ha ha." And he's like, "No, he can keep the shield. I gave it to him." And it's like, yeah, seeing that play out is pretty interesting. U.S. Agent does show up in the second volume, and he does fight Sam Wilson, and that's interesting as well. And just seeing Steve-O's plans play out in Sam Wilson Captain America is also pretty good too. So I'm gonna stop this part of the video like right here because I'm almost at the 30-minute mark. I'm at like 27 minutes. I'm gonna record the second half of this video later today. But I do have this really funny joke from a comedian that I really like, Bo Burnham. I don't know if you know him. So he has a joke about video editors, right? All right. So video editors are so. Moving on now. So after reviewing the Falcon and the Winter Soldier Disney Plus comic book really, I will be going into Loki. Now the thing about Loki is that it's not really based off of a comic book. It takes elements like I mentioned earlier. The only one I was able really to find, and it really has something to do with the show, but it's still, I guess, a moderately interesting read, is the vote for Loki. It's 4 issues. It was okay. There's nothing really interesting happened in it other than Loki does run for president under the guise that he will lie to your face, and you can at least trust him about that, because politicians will lie to you, but they'll be like, oh no, I'm telling you the truth, whereas Loki is like, no, I am deliberately lying to you, and he like makes all these promises and he never sees them through. And yeah, it's honestly, you don't really need to read this one. It has nothing really to do with the Marvel Universe. The only thing that was like really interesting about it was his costume. This is one they used in the Loki episode 5, I believe. 5 or 6. You know, President Loki. Here you see that's him. It's Captain America, and that's his bodyguard. It's a whole thing. The artwork, honestly, it looks pretty weird. I don't know. It's like, if you guys have ever seen Napoleon Dynamite, he looks like what Napoleon Dynamite would look like if you were like a comic book. Like, that's how the style looks like. It's honestly forgettable. I don't have any other Loki related comics. There's like Kid Loki, Lady Loki, Loki, Agent of Asgard, but Loki's not a favorite character of mine, so I'm not gonna really go into it. Other than that, that's about it for Loki. I already covered What If in the first video with the Watcher and Uatu, and so I'm not gonna go into that. I already went into that earlier because like the Watchers are like my favorite things ever. So the next upcoming Disney Plus show is Hawkeye, and the Disney Plus show was taking a lot of elements from the Matt Fraction run 2012. Now, fun thing to know about Hawkeye is that he is hard of hearing. They don't really address it in the movies. I think in this show they will address it a little bit. He is hard of hearing. I know a little bit of sign language because I knew Hawkeye was deaf, and his Disney Plus show is going to address it a little bit more. And the new upcoming Eternals movie has a deaf character that's going to do a lot of sign language, and I'm like, I want to know at least a little bit so I can more or less kind of understand what she's saying without having to read too much of the subtitles. I watch movies with subtitles, but it's still, I like to one up people. So I'll watch movies with like Spanish talking people and they'll speak Spanish, and I'm like, I don't need to read subtitles. But I still do, because I don't know. Like, I like reading, whatever. I don't know. I still read subtitles. Yeah, so Hawkeye, the Matt Fraction run, 2012. My Life as a Weapon. Shut up. My Life as a Weapon. So you know how I said that like they kind of give you like information of everything, like background information of what you need to know about the characters going into a new run. Well, the only thing they gave about in this one is like, oh yeah, Hawk is an Avenger. That's all you do now, and it's so funny because, yeah, they just like, yeah, he's an Avenger. He's just a dude with bow and arrow, fights alongside Avengers, and it's that's kind of funny. They kind of address that. Hawkeye in the comics is so comedic. It's so he's so funny. He's so relatable because he's constantly getting hurt, and it's like that was a bad idea, but I have a worse one, and he executes the worst one, and it's he's so relatable. He's so funny, and yeah, this one he's living in New York. He's not working with the Avengers. Like like some of them show up, sure, but like it's not like fighting like Galactus or like some Norse villain or like whatever space race or whatever. It's just him living in New York, trying to live his life. He's he becomes a landlord because tenants can't afford to pay, so he buys the building and is like, yeah, you guys can live here for free, and he has to fight a mafia. That's pretty street level, and he does get beat up a lot because he is just one dude, and it is interesting seeing that aspect of Hawkeye like emphasized because you don't really see it in the movies because they'll like have throwaway lines. Oh yeah, Hawkeye is just one dude, and like he'll get hurt. He like in Age of Ultron he got shot and like fix him up, and like okay, like they didn't really touch on that much, which kind of sucks because I'm telling you it makes his character really interesting. And Kate Bishop, Lady Hawkeye or whatever. I mean, her character name is Hawkeye, but like the female version of Hawkeye made an appearance like years ago. I don't know, like I want to say 2005, but don't quote me on that. Like Young Avengers, she does come out in this run. Their dynamic is really funny too. I can't wait to see their dynamic in the Disney Plus show. They're just hilarious. They're so funny. Yeah, he's kind of like down on his luck, sort of. He's kind of living like a bum, but he's not a bum. He's just lazy and he's just tired because he is just one dude. And sorry, and Kate Bishop is like she's a rich girl, like Hall & Oates. I don't know if anyone caught it. She's a rich girl, and so she's used to like living a luxurious life, and then she's living with Hawkeye, or they're kind of living together. They're like roommates. Kate Bishop is significantly younger, so I just want to put that out there. They're significantly younger. They do not date. I want to make that clear. That's weird. Yeah, they kind of like they're like roommates or whatever, and yeah, she's like full of youth because she is younger, and he's just like, I'm so tired, I don't want to do anything, and she's like always lecturing him like, you're so lazy, blah 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 blah, and yeah, and like he just makes like some of the worst decisions ever, and she's always calling him out on it, like, you make such terrible decisions, and he's like, I know. And I'm telling you, their dynamic is so funny, and they have to fight the mafia, and the mafia's kind of dumb, but whatever. And then so it's 4 volumes. These I'm pretty sure you can find like I'm pretty sure there's a complete collection of Matt Fraction, but it's only like 4 volumes. I think each volume has like what 5 issues. Yeah, so it's like 25 issues in total. At one point, Kate Bishop does leave Clint Barton Hawkeye, and she moves to L.A. and she's so funny because she's so poor and she's so used to living a luxurious life. She's like, I don't have any money to do anything, and so she ends up becoming a private investigator. And she sucks so much. She's so bad at her job. I think it's hilarious. It's so funny just how bad at her job she is. And she tries to fix things and she makes things worse. And she's like, I don't know how to do this. And it's so, like, she can be an Avenger, but she can't have, like, a normal job to make money. And it's just, I don't know. I think that's a hilarious aspect of her character. You know, where she's so used to, like having all this money, not having to worry about it, or now she has to worry about how am I gonna where am I gonna get the money to eat? And I think it's hilarious. I don't know if people think it's funny. I love that. I think it's hilarious. Yeah. Anyways, the one that focuses on her living in LA is Volume 3, LA Woman. I recommend getting the 4 volumes, so 4 complete set, I guess, whatever set. It's not really set. Yeah, the four complete volumes. But if you just want to read like a funny Kate Bishop story, this is it. It is funny. I think it's funny, but it also it's not just comedic. It does get pretty serious at times, and you can read the 3rd volume without reading the first 2, but they do kind of connect. So I just want to put that out there. They do connect, and it's hilarious. I'm so excited for Hawkeye. I want to learn archery, but trying to. I just didn't find time. Really, if anything, I just didn't find time. Anyways, so that's kind of it for this year's Disney Plus series. But Miss Marvel was supposed to come out later this year, but I don't think it will. I think it's gonna come out early next year. So I bought first volume. I read some of her comics back in high school. They were pretty good. I didn't read her first issues, so I thought I was kind of curious on how it is she got her powers. I bought the first 4 issues, and they were pretty good. I really like them. God, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I really liked her first 4 volumes because they take place right before Secret Wars, and I'll probably get into that in the next video because there's so many things that kind of tie into each other and lead into each other, and it's kind of a whole mess. But her character, I think her character is actually really relatable despite her being I believe she's Muslim. Despite her being Muslim, because she's a kid and she's kind of she idolizes about these superheroes, and she's like, wow, oh my god. And then she writes, I don't write fan fiction, but she writes fan fiction, and it's so, I think it's purposely cringy, and it's so funny. And then she teams up with Spider-Man and or Captain Marvel. She'll team up with Spider-Man, and in the comic, Spider-Man and Captain Marvel dated, and she's asking him all these questions about the relationship, and he's like, how do you know this much? And she's like, oh yeah, I'm a huge nerd. And I don't know, I think it's hilarious. But yeah, I liked her first few issues. They were pretty interesting because around this time, Marvel. Should I get into this now or later? I'll get into it now, whatever. So Marvel, the Marvel Cinematic Universe couldn't use the word mutants because that word technically belonged to Fox, because Fox owned all the rights to mutants. And so Marvel asked Fox, hey, do you think we can get our X-Men back and we'll pay you a decent amount? And Fox was like, no. And so Marvel Comics is like, okay, that's fine. We're going to kill off almost every mutant, and we're going to stop making mutants characters so that you can use them in your movies and we can use them. And so that's exactly what they did. And so they created a whole story arc throughout the Marvel universe, where So Miss Marvel is Inhuman, and the way Inhumans get their powers is through a Terrigenesis mist, like a whatever, like an alien mist, right? And so in Marvel comics, something happened. The Inhuman mist was modified, was altered, not modified, because in modified implied kind of better, but it didn't get better. It was altered so that if it was exposed to mutants, they would die, or they would get sick and they would die. And so that's exactly what happened. They released it out, and like a decent amount of mutants were killed off, and in response to that, a lot more Inhumans were created, hence Miss Marvel. So now that Marvel Studios could use the Inhuman characters, because they were initially going to have a movie called Inhumans back in 2018, but plans fell through. Ike Perlmutter is a terrible human being. He was kind of problem why he was one of the reasons why plans fell through. And so yeah, so that's why Marvel's like, yeah, we're gonna kill off all your mutants, and we're just gonna make Inhumans our own thing, and we're gonna make Inhumans better. And they killed off all their mutants, and they made the Inhumans TV show, and it sucked. I haven't seen it. I saw like the first 2 episodes, but I was like tired, and it sucked. And then their Inhuman movie fell through, and then Marvel Studios ended up getting the mutants anyways, and now they have mutants and Inhumans, and that's good for them. But yeah, I like Miss Marvel. I think she's awesome. Her comic book, there's nothing too like grand about her comic book, but it's still worth reading. It's still worth checking out. Her character is pretty interesting. I don't know what she's up to nowadays. I've stopped kind of reading certain. I kind of keep up with like vague plot points, but I don't know what's going on with her other than what was that last thing? Outlawed. Yeah, that's the whole thing. I don't really fully know what's going on with that, but yeah, so it's still worth checking out. They do talk a lot about Muslim culture, which I remember in high school like learning about it and then reading the comic, and I was like, oh, I know what this is. Awesome. And then when I was reading the first 4 issues again, first 4 volumes, they said something, and I'm like, I don't know what that means, and so I had to look it up, and I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, so yeah, I don't have much to say about that really, other than it's worth checking out. Oh, there's a show. What's it called? Never Have I Ever. Uh, Kind of reminds me of Miss Marvel in terms of like she's also Muslim, and like I kind of hope their characters are similar because it's what made. I think it's what made the show good. I don't think it will. I think they'll have similarities, but it probably won't be similar. I just hope it's they have enough similarities where like this is hilarious, you know. Yeah, okay, I think I'm done for this video. Next video, I don't know what I'm going to recommend or talk about, but I do talk a lot. I apologize for talking too much, but he did sit through all these minutes. That's a lot. I don't think I'm going to ever review DC Comics because I don't read DC Comics. I'd like to, but I don't have a guide, and plus I'm already behind on a lot of Marvel comics, and I have school and work. Anyways, I'll see you guys. See you guys some other day.